Hey everybody, it's your boy Captain Hunter coming at you again. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to check out this episode. Thank you so much. Make sure that you hit that rate, subscribe, and share button. We're not going to belabor the point or the time. We're going to jump right into this. We're going to talk about the dumpster fire of a congressional hearing that was Miss Kimberlycheatle, and her answers were unacceptable. Her answers were obviously directed and given point by point of what to say, what to answer, what not to answer. And some of it I actually agree with, and I'm going to give my reasons for why she did not answer these questions. You can take from it whatever you want. I don't get a chance to watch a lot of congressional hearings back to back. I get a little bit more time now that I'm retired, but listen, this was bad. And there was one congressman, and I didn't clip any of this, so I'm just going to kind of go off of memory. And I took some notes. I go through the notes here. But one congressman said it correctly. If you weren't going to be fired for your handling of the situation and what went down concerning the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, then you should be fired for your handling it post the event, because it's been a complete mess. And if you watch the full thing, we'll get into it. So I want to talk a little bit about, and this is going to be in no particular order. I kind of took notes as I saw different Congress people asking questions and all this kind of stuff. So they found this guy, right, Thomas Crooks, walking around, and of course we all know the stories right now that the public was taking pictures and videos and notifying law enforcement, notifying these individuals here and there that, hey, there's this guy doing this, that, and the other. And we know that there was a slow, if at all, or inadequate response. Now, one of the biggest reasons that Cheatle did not give definitive answers as far as timing, how long it took for this to happen, how long it took for that to happen, is because she didn't want to lock herself down to direct times, because nobody wants to come into her test. She doesn't want to have anybody come to her testimony and say, hey, here's the final analysis and here's what you said. How come you're wrong? How come you look incompetent? So she directed a lot of information back to the FBI. Now, because they're doing, I guess, the official investigation. Of course, there's other DOJ investigations. Homeland Security is doing an investigation, and of course, I'm sure that the internal service, whatever that would be, for the Secret Service, is also doing this investigation. I'm sure that they're probably tripping all over each other, or trying their best not to trip all over each other, try to come up with these answers. But that's my assessment as to why she was so evasive or so elusive and not giving specific times and all that type of thing. Another big question was, how many agents did you have? What was going on here? What was going on there? What was the range of protection or the perimeter? Or who was in charge of this, charge of that? And a lot of this she didn't want to give away because she didn't want to give away the keys to the store. In other words, she didn't want America's enemies or any other potential assassin to look at this and have the information, right? Okay, so let's just say that the detail is 50 people, right? We had 50 people there, right? And so now in a bad person's mind, or in an enemy's mind, they would say, okay, we got to do this, that, and the other, right? We got to be able to overcome these 50 people because of the size of the event, location, et cetera, et cetera. Now, let me just say, in the part of the congressman, there was Congress people who were asking the questions. There's a lot of grandstanding. Everything I just said, they already know. I mean, these people are obviously more in the know than I am. So, but a lot of it was just grandstanding and theater for the American people. Some of it, I do agree, should have been answered and could have been answered. But a lot of it, I think, was just a lot of grandstanding that was going on. So that's my opinion. So they talked about the guy having a rangefinder and this idea of moving from a suspicious person to threat, right? So suspicious person may be down here, and next thing you know, up here, you have a threat. So what is the elevation of that? And they were trying to suggest, they being the Congress people, when in their questioning of Miss Cheatle, I'm calling her Miss because I don't think she's going to be director for much long. They were saying, okay, well, what point is this a suspicious person? And there was one of the congressmen list, I think it was a congresswoman, ran down a list of items that were not. Yeah, it was Marjorie Taylor Greene, running down a list of people, of items that were not allowed inside. I think that one of them was a rangefinder. So that certainly should have been a suspicion. Now, in public events, in these types of events, you have to be very, very careful as to who you allow in and who you don't allow in, and who you exclude and who you don't allow to, obviously, to come in. So you have to be very, very careful about that type of thing, because there's freedom of speech and it's a public event and all that kind of stuff. Donald Trump, when he was running for president the first time, came to my city, and I was the midnight shift commander at the time. And I was responsible for setting up the initial perimeter as outlined in detail by the Secret Service, or his security team. I should call it a security team, because it was a private event. And I can't remember off the top of my head. It probably was Secret Service at the time, but it's definitely security that he had, whether he paid for it himself or whether it was Secret Service. I do not remember. It was 6, 7, 8 years ago. And but anyway, whatever details they had, right? So there was already a perimeter that they had established, and it was my job to make sure that my officers set up the perimeter, and that we stood guard until the first shift came in and took over and all that. So I had to be in these different meetings and all this kind of stuff, right? So rangefinder. So that was a big thing. How come a guy with a rangefinder isn't automatically part of this exclusion, and et cetera, et cetera? You know, how come he's not on the list? How come that's not suspicious behavior? How come that's not a threat level? A lot of grandstanding. They already know this, right? So yes, a rangefinder, while suspicious, is not an arrestable offense, and probably under their rules and regulations is not an excludable defense, but it is something to make them suspicious and make you a person of interest. So let me talk about this idea of being suspicious, and this is very, very important for law enforcement concerning the laws that govern when police or agents of the state, people think it's just police, but it's agents of the state, DEA, ATF, Border Patrol, police officers, state police, corrections officers, Secret Service, Homeland Security, U.S. Marshals, but when any of these people with law powers to arrest, detain, and stop, when can they do that? That is the question that has to be answered. So there's a couple of different laws. I'm not going to run through them all, but it's Terry v. Ohio, and it's Garner versus Tennessee versus Garner, things along those lines, right? You can do, those are different case laws. You can stop the video, pause the video, come back to it, finish it out. But you can Google that, and it'll give you a time when and how police officers can stop and detain people. So particularly since George Floyd, there has been a backlash against what I would call the Tennessee versus Garner. Tennessee versus Garner essentially means that police have to have some type of articulable suspicion in order to perform a stop. There is a differentiation between a stop of an individual. Hey, you are not free to leave, by the police. When they say that to you, you are not free to leave. And there is a differentiation between that and when the police just come up to you and just want to question you. Hey, listen, what are you doing a rangefinder? What's your name? Where are you coming from? And in those circumstances, we've all seen the videos. Hey, listen, officer, am I free to leave? And the officer says, no, you're not free to leave. Then you have been stopped, and therefore Terry v. Ohio has kicked in. In other words, that they have stopped and impeded your progress. You cannot leave. You are not free to leave when you are now the suspect of an investigation, et cetera, et cetera. You also need articulable, reasonable suspicion to perform this stop. Not probable cause, articulable suspicion. What is it that has made this person suspicious? And being in a certain place at a certain time is not reason. Having a rangefinder in and of itself is not a reason to perform a Terry stop, which would include a pat down of their outer garments looking for a weapon. So these are all things that I've talked about in other videos. Go back to them. If you need that, I'll go into a deep dive of what that is. But I'm trying to give a reason as to why police or Secret Service agents didn't immediately stop and detain him, because he was not a threat. Because it was not a threat. It's just a suspicious person, someone we're just going to keep an eye on, right? Then eventually, apparently they lost contact with this guy. I didn't write down the times about when they first were notified and when they first saw him, or pictures were they named all that. I didn't write all that down, right? But I'm just trying to give a kind of a brief overview. So the rangefinder and him doing all these other things that they listed, right? He flew a drone over this. He did this. Listen, the officers on the scene, if you watch the videos, if you watched it, then you would know that all of this type of stuff that they were talking about. He flew a drone over. He had internet searches. He did this, and he was a part of this shooting club. How come you guys didn't know this, right? It's grandstanding. It's grandstanding. What do the officers know at a particular time? I'm sure that the Secret Service gets thousands and thousands of threats, thousands and thousands of people who are performing searches that I'm sure that AI now is linking together, right? I Google stuff, right? Right. So I'm probably being watched to a certain degree, right? So you can't expect these officers to do that, right? So they got a job to do. And yes, it seems as if they are understaffed. Let me talk a little bit about being understaffed. All of law enforcement is understaffed. Nobody wants to become a police officer. Nobody wants to become a state trooper. Nobody wants to join the Secret Service. ATF, marshals, all law enforcement, probably these other agencies might not have the drop that particularly city cops are having. They cannot fill their rosters. They're boosting up the money and all this kind of stuff. I watched a report that said 48% of within the last year of Secret Service have left the Secret Service because they are just burnt out, dissatisfied, whatever. Maybe they don't like the leadership, but this is a problem. And in particular, I can imagine it's a big problem if you are one of the individuals who have been signed and attached for I'm going to call it plainclothes duty. I don't know what their technical term of it would be. But if you're on plainclothes duty, in other words, you're assigned to protection, and they have uniform officers. Uniform officers, I would imagine, have a regular 9-to-5 set schedule. But if you are if you are a plainclothes individual, that would mean that you have to follow the president around. So if he wants to go to golfing, you got to go golfing. He wants to go for a run, you got to go for a run. He wants to go swimming, you got to go clear at the pool, right? So, or not just them, but their family members, the wives, right, the children, right? You got to be with them at all time. And how much time does that leave in your own life? And just like the regular public sector, there is a push for more quality of life, family life. Everybody wants that, right? Nobody wants to be at work for 80 hours a week, right? So you want to see your wife and kids. You want to get a wife and kids, right? You want to do all these types of things. So that kind of quality of life where you're always on the go, you're on Air Force One, you're doing this, you're doing I forget the term is eluding me right now, but the advanced teams, right? You're part of the advanced team, right? You got to do all this kind of stuff, right? Then your protectee, it wants to do certain things and all this kind of stuff, right? So you got to be able to do all that. So that's that. So I talked about the rangefinder. They talked about, and that what I just talked about is the challenging environment that these officers are in right now, and it's challenging because nobody wants to join it. Nobody wants to join the department. They got a 48% rate of attrition and all that. So it's really a difficult thing. We don't know enough, right? So I wrote this down in the notes, and I think that she was deliberately, Miss Cheatle was deliberately being evasive because of what I mentioned on the outset, is that we don't know all the answers. She doesn't want to get locked down in the answer, and some of it had to do with top secret clearance. Some things the public just doesn't need to know. She's not going to tell you how many people are assigned to a presidential detail. She's not going to tell you how far in advance we do stuff, even though she did mention 5 days or whatever. There's a lot of things that are just not going to tell us. It's called the Secret Service for a reason, and they don't want the general public knowing about what methods it takes to protect people in the advanced teams and how many people do this and the amount of stuff, right? They don't want people knowing that, right? So numerous calls for a resignation. I definitely think at this point she should resign. She had no answers. She did poorly in answering the questions. Even when she did try to get the questions, you could tell it was just rehearsed, and it was just horrible to see. It was actually very cringeworthy to watch, and very unsettling. The FBI is still doing an investigation, but as I mentioned, they, along with other agencies, are doing an investigation. I'm sure that I would assume that the most important investigation is going to come from the FBI. Homeland Security is going to do whatever they got to do as far as their mission statement, vision statement, and all that kind of stuff, and what they're trying to do, and what kind of effect this would have on the the future of national security. FBI is doing the criminal investigation. That's the shooting and all that. So, but I would think that the most important investigation from an internal side would come from their own internal investigation as well as Homeland Security. There was epic failures here. She admitted that. Director Cheatle admitted that there were numerous failures. I mean, and they blasted her about the guy on the roof. Well, how come there was nobody on this roof, on the roof of the building? You talked about the slope, but the slope that you had the other nesters on, other sniper nests on, were even more steep. What are you talking about? They called her out about all that kind of foolishness, right? So it was really, really just bad. The final report, I guess, from the FBI could come in within a month. And listen, it takes time to do these. It takes time to do these investigations. Now, she should have done or had more answers within the 9 days. I definitely agree with that. She should have been more forthcoming about what she knew, what the FBI told her, and what she refused to answer. That was bad. And they would ask her, listen, did the FBI tell you how many shell casings were on the roof? Yes, they told me. Well, can you tell us? Well, I would direct you to you have the answer. So that was bad that he was so stonewalling them on answers, right? And some of that, again, I think is grandstanding. They know that what the FBI can and cannot release, and they don't want information getting out. The FBI is notorious for being secretive, non-transparent in their investigations. Some of that I think is good, but there's got to be a point in time when you've got to give the public some stuff, especially to quell. And the Congress people were absolutely right. There are rumors flying around. I talked to people. There are rumors flying around here, and that is being repeated by people in the media, the press, who are saying different things that are just untrue. But they don't know they're untrue because there's not been any transparency. She was called out about her lack of transparency. She was called out about her lack of producing or conducting of interviews, press conferences. She was called out about the lack of press conferences. Okay, you've been on ABC News, but you're not going to do a press conference? You had 9 days. Your deputies, nobody's done it. FBI, nobody's talking to the American public. Somebody just tried to kill this man. Jeez, what are we doing? What are we doing here? What are we doing? So again, the final report could take up to a month. It takes time. You got to interview people. You got to transcribe it. It takes time to generate this report. They don't just come overnight. Yes, she should have told her what she knows, but these things, right? It's 60 days. When I was over internal affairs, we had 45 days to complete a report. So somebody makes a complaint against a police officer, right? The police officer kicked me too many times. It may take 45. You got to look for video. You got to interview witnesses. You got to take statements. You got to transcribe statements. You got to interview the officers. There's a lot of work to be done. Now, sometimes it can be done within 3, 4, 5 days, but sometimes the more complex the investigation, the more time it's going to take. I would not even be surprised if it takes more than 60 days, even if they're working full time, right? Because you got to do ballistics reports. You got to interview all these different witnesses. You got to obtain and then coordinate all the different cell phone videos and make it one big video so we know the exact timestamps. And this is why she didn't want to give times, right? All this different stuff, right? Some of this has been done, pieced together by different news agencies, but you need the feds to do it. Make sure it's really legit. All this type of stuff. You got to dig through the guy's emails. You got to dig through his phone. You got to dig through his contacts. Interview his parents. Where does gun come from? You got to do all this. Yes, there's multiple agents working on it, but it takes time, right? It takes time. There's been another big point that the congressman made that there has been no discipline that has been the result of this. Discipline is a result of definitive infractions. And of course, all the congressmen know this. This is why I'm saying that they're grandstanding. You cannot discipline anyone, certainly not without the consequences of legal actions. You cannot discipline anyone without them knowing or without an infraction of policy or state law. But in other words, they would have had to, in order to discipline anyone, you have to know what policy they violated. So you don't know, you as a director or leadership does not know what policy anybody has violated until they have their final report and say, okay, based on what we are supposed to do in our rules, regulations, policies, and procedures, and then once you compare that to what they actually did or did not do on that day, that is when you get to disciplinary actions. So you should just be fired. You just, technically they can't even fire this lady, Miss Cheatle, until they know that she violated some policy. It would be better if she resigned, because if she gets fired as a knee-jerk reaction, somebody's watching this, they just fire her because they didn't like this, that, and the other. You got to have reasons and all this type of thing. It may be a little more relaxed in her position, but because you got to have trust, and I'm sure that they could probably, I'm sure that there's some kind of clause in their policies and procedures that you have to obtain and maintain the trust and be transparent, all this type of other type of language that they could probably, that the head of Homeland Security could fire her for. But you cannot discipline people until you have a definitive answer as to they violated this policy. They were supposed to do something, or they neglected to do something, and they didn't do it. All right. There's a couple of senators that asked good questions. Senator Sessions, Senator Biggs. There was a Senator Mace, a woman, Mace or Macy, I can't remember her name. She asked some good questions. I wrote something by Mr. Biggs, Congressman Biggs. Yeah, he asked how large the perimeter was, and she didn't want to answer all that, right? So again, I think that her reluctance to answer about the size of the perimeter, who can carry things out, was it okay to carry a gun, and all this type of thing. I think that, they don't want those secrets getting out. They just don't want those secrets getting out. Could it be a little bit of embarrassment too? Yeah. Did they not have enough personnel? Probably. And there was allegations of emails being sent and requests for more people based on the size of the threat that was supposed to be coming, I guess, from Iran. So yeah, this was a problem. This was an epic scale problem. Right. So also, what I didn't appreciate, but you knew that was coming, was that the Democrats were going to make this about take this opportunity to talk about guns. So it wasn't even automatic. It was a semi-automatic, right? It was the AR style type rifle, but it was a semi-automatic. So again, Miss Mace, yeah, that's her name. I wrote it down here. Said you want to fire people. I said you can't just fire people. You gotta. It's all grandstanding. They know this. Most of these people are lawyers. They have some type of experience with this. You cannot just fire her. You can call for her resignation, but whatever. She's not going to do it. What's surprising is that in the government, U.S. government, the Secret Service ranks 413 out of the 459 agencies within the U.S. government. Secret Service ranks 413th for the worst places to work. That was shocking. That is a serious problem, and I don't necessarily think it's her fault. I don't necessarily think it's the fault of any of the leadership or the command staff within the agency. I just think it's the state of law enforcement, and in particular, what they need to change about the agency. So that's a. Let's see. So I talked about suspicious behavior, and I think that's going to leave it off. So there's a difference between suspicious behavior and threatening behavior. And if there's threatening behavior, and again, I'm going to maintain this, if the snipers had seen this individual laying on a roof in a prone position, taking aim, I absolutely agree that given that President Trump was on the stage, giving the president's facts and circumstances that the sniper had at the time, I see a man looking down a rifle scope, down an AR-15 style rifle, aiming and lining up for the president. I absolutely believe that sniper has absolute justification under the rules of engagement to take out that individual. I've heard other people saying that's not the case. I'm telling you, as one who's been in that position, police officers do not have to wait for someone to take aim at me to before I can pull my gun and then take corrective action. I don't have to wait for the bullet to leave the chamber before I take action. And so I'm saying that the same standard of use of force and use of force escalation, which Director Cheatle talked about, this is the same. It's the same use of force, same constitutional standard. So that's my take on this. Listen, I thought she should have been more forthcoming. It was interesting, a lot of grandstanding and all that. But there's a lot of things that she didn't want to answer because I'm sure her lawyers told her not to answer it. And they just don't have all the answers. I know people are going to be mad. People don't like everything that's going on. But a lot of it is just, listen, we're just grandstanding. It's just a lot of grandstanding. Should she have been more prepared and forthcoming with some answers? Yes. They asked her how many times or how many shell casings were on the roof, and now, I'm thinking about this now. She's been getting daily updates from the FBI about the progress of the investigation. Apparently, the FBI told her how many shell casings were on the roof. She has refused to release that information. There's got to be a reason behind that. And one reason that I can think of, I'm not saying this is it, I'm just saying one reason I can think of, is that we heard about 8 shots. If there's only 4 shots on the roof, where do the other 4 shots come from? I'm just saying. I'm not trying to start any conspiracy theory. I'm not trying to start all that. I'm just saying there's got to be reasons why they don't want to answer these questions. And other questions that they went on about. DEI was brought up. I did a video about DEI. Make sure you check that video out. It was brought up, and it was defended by someone on the Democratic side. I want to say it was the Senate. I keep calling them senators, from the congresspersons from Massachusetts. Her name is escaping me, but anyway, it was brought up. Listen, I don't know if she was a DEI hire or not. I don't know if the other agents who seemed to be fumbling on that day couldn't get hold of their weapons, but it was brought up, and it's not looking well. It's not looking well. It's not looking well. And listen, I'm disappointed in that. I'm disappointed in that. I don't take pleasure in that, and I think that I want competent people. Listen, when I was a police officer and we were about to go through a building, and we were about to kick the door in, when I looked to my left, when I looked to my right, I don't know how it's going to come out in the video, but I'm looking to my left, and I'm looking to my right, and I'm looking at my 6. I want to know that that person is competent and capable of doing the job. I'll just leave it there. And so this Miss Cheatle was excoriated. She was blasted, any other term you want to put in there on this. And everybody was calling for her to resign or whatever. And I don't think that she should have resigned, because there was certainly some mishaps. But post this incident, her performance today, her lack of press conferences. Listen, this woman didn't even go to the scene. You had 9 days. You didn't even go to the scene. She's got a personal cell phone and a government provided cell phone, and you're calling people on this, that, and the other. Well, what kind of system is this? Why don't you should have one cell phone, and that should be able to talk to anybody. If you go to another country, you got to figure all that out. That would be one of my recommendations. We got to figure out this communication thing. And whatever city you go to, whatever communications lapses that you have or delays that you have between talking to your own personnel and them communicating with the police and getting on, you got to be able to get on one frequency. You got to figure that. I think that was after 9/11 commission, wasn't it? If I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me correctly, you got to get on one frequency. Everybody's going to be able to talk to each other. If there's a delay in that, that's a problem. And if you got to use specialized encrypted apps that on your phone that are not on your government device, what is up with our encryption process? What is up with that? We got to figure all that out. So those are big things. Our communication with local law enforcement has to be figured out. Local law enforcement, state police, and sheriff's deputies, and whoever else you're talking to, you all got to be able to talk in the same time in real time immediately. That's got to be a priority. There's another priority. Oh, I think I'm going to leave it off with here's some. You got to take all these other stuff away from the Secret Service. This fraud, this fraud and bad checks and all that. No, get rid of all that. Secret Service's job is now number one, protection of our assets. This is your job. This would be my recommendation. This is your job. This is your sole function is to do this. Either you're investigating individuals who have made threats against these people, or you are actually involved in protection, or you're involved in protection, aka either actually present there as bodyguards, or you're doing advanced placements, or you're investigating individuals. That's your job. Get rid of this fraud, this money laundering, this bad checks, forgeries, counterfeit money. Get rid of all that. Give it to the FBI. Give it to ATF. Give it to somebody else. Because that, if you're really that bad, if you're really scrounging for people and you want more assets, and people, they didn't say this, but I'm just guessing. People can't call in sick, and people can't get vacation days, and this, that, and the other, and you got a 48% attrition rate. You got to give all that stuff up, and this is our focus. This is our mission. This is our mission right now, has to be refocused and recentered to our personnel protection. That is our mission, our focus, and therefore we can have a zero sum, or whatever their mission statement is, zero mission fail or something like that, whatever that is. So that's my recommendation, but I'm a nobody. So let me know your thoughts, your opinions. That's just a brief kind of summary of what the issue was. She was deliberately being evasive because she was told to. A lot of Congress was just there grandstanding. Some questions she should have answered, I think. Again, I didn't clip anything, but you can go watch it. Interesting. I mean, get your popcorn out, right? And I felt bad for her, but we knew this was coming. I mean, it's not like you didn't know this was coming. She had 9 days to prepare for this, and the answers that she said and what she did answers was unacceptable. Unacceptable. All right, everybody, let me know your thoughts, your opinion. Let's get the conversation going in the comment section, and make sure you hit that like button.